Hey, welcome back to the shed. So today we are going to be doing a fun little project. We're making a new business receipt book. So it's going to be fun. Yeah, let's strap in. Okay, so here is our mission today. I have a customer who they run a business and they have this receipt book that they got from the bank a while ago, and as you can see, it's not exactly holding up very well. So they have this receipt book that they get from the bank that they work through, and it's got a slice of thick paper that you pull out from underneath. You slide it in between your pages. You write on it for carbon copies. Nothing too scary, right? Now, what they have been using up until now, it's made from cardboard and cheap plastic, and anyone who's ever used these things can attest that they last like a month before they start looking dog-eared. They've gone as far as like even trying to tape it down with some duct tape in order to make it hold together a little bit longer. So they are looking for something a little nicer, a little more durable, functional, right? So what we're going to do is we are going to be making it out of this waxy utility black leather and this floral print embossed leather. Both of which are from Tandy here in Canada. So if you're ever at the Tandy store in Mississauga, say Tim from Lindsay sent you, and then they'll know where you got the information from. So what we need to do is we need to make a couple measurements and jot this down and start cutting some stuff. So let me find my pen and paper so I can start writing some measurements down. Okay, so first, I'm going to take a measurement of our receipt book. Okay. So, receipt book. Okay, so the receipt book measures about 5.5 inches by 8 inches. So 5.5 and then 8. And so we need to make sure that there's enough room for this flop to come out from beneath. So we don't want to go any more than, say, 6 inches on this panel here where it's going to slide into. So 6 inches. Just to make a note of that. Because we're going to wind up making a little panel inside here, so this is going to be 6 inches tall for this book to slide in. Okay? Now, here on our original, it did have a spine, but they have since taped it together with the back panel to tape it flush. So we are going to measure our front panel. So our front panel is, let's see here. So I've got 9 inches. Okay, so front panel. So that's 9 inches by so this has got 7.25, which makes sense because if you've got this 5.5 wide, okay, so you know what, let's just make it just an even 7, just for simplicity's sake. So 7. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to make, so this is going to be 7 inches. We're going to have a 1-inch spine, and then we're going to have 7 inches, and then it's going to be 9 tall. Not too complicated, not too bad. Now, our spine, we're going to make the spine out of the floral embossed leather. So our spine needs to be, so spine is 1 inch by 9. And inside here, we have this little flap here, so you could put paper behind it. So we're going to do that as well. So that comes out to, so this is basically 6.25 by 6.25. So if our front panel, if we're shoving it down by a little bit, so I'm going to make that one, so this is going to be inside flap, left, in this shape here. So if we're going 9 tall, so let's do 6 inches tall, and let's do 6 inches wide. So just 6 by 6, like a 6 by 6 square, and we just cut off the corner. Now, right now, the original one, the corner, it gets cut off at 3 on the top, and so we'll do 3 on the top, and then 3 here. So that makes sense. So that'll give us, so 6 tall, 6 wide, go 3 over, cut down to 3 down, trim off this corner. Cool, easy peasy. And then this panel here, so if the back panel is 7 wide, and we said that we want it to be about 6 tall, yeah, because if we're going to be 9 tall overall, so yeah, so let's do 6 by 7. So inside right panel, it's going to be 6 by 7, because 7 wide, 6 tall, we'll put it in the middle. We'll put it maybe an inch down from the top. Okay. So, what we need to do is we need to cut 2 squares from our black leather, 7 by 9, 1 from our floral leather, 1 by 9, and then a 6 by 7 and 6 by 6. So not too complicated. Okay, so let me jot that down here. So black, 7 by 9 times 2. Flower is going to be 1 by 9 and 6 by 6 and 6 by 7. Okay. So this flower one, I've already got cut out a scrap of it from another project. So what we're going to do is I'm going to get us started off here with a good straight line. Okay. And then we go 9 inches down at that 1 inch length. then we're also going to have a flap that will go over around the other side, or around from the back to the front, for a little snap in order to seal it closed. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut a 1-inch strip from this. We're going to mark out the first 9 inches of it, which is going to be our spine. And then the rest we'll plan to use for our flap. So that's going to be about 6-7 inches. Okay, easy enough. So let's get that cut out. Where did my utility knife go? There we go. And let's get a fresh blade on the utility knife. Always start with a fresh blade. Okay. Oh, there we go. Fresh blade. Okay. So let's cut this up here. Okay. There we go. So that gives us our spine, and the flap is going to go around from the back of the book to the front of the book. So we'll set those off to the side. Now we need to get a 6x6 and a 6x7 square. Okay. Six. And there's 6. There we go. Oh. Okay. So let's get you cut out. There we go. So there is our 6x6. Now we also said that we were going to do a 3-inch corner cutoff. So we've got 3 inches is here, and 3 inches is here. So we need to draw a line from here mark was. There we go. Just got to cut that line there. Okay, so there is our flap that'll go in that inside pocket. We'll put that off to the side here. And we need a 6x7. Okay. There's 7. And there's 6. And yep, there we go. Okay, there we go. So there is our 6x7. And now where did my book go? So the idea is that this back flap here is going to go slide in like that. So, beauty, perfect. We're all set. We need to do 2 of the 7x9s on the black. Okay, so this black leather, what's really cool about this leather is it has like a wax on it, so it's nice and durable, kind of water resistant. Okay, so we're going to go, what did I say, 7x9? Okay. So if I do 7 here, oops, 9 here, okay, so there's our first one, and then we're going to mark out our second one, which will be up here at the 7, over here to the 9. Okay. Okay. Okay, there we go. Beautiful. Now, I don't know if the camera's going to pick this up or not, but in this cut that I have here, it's got the marking here. That's like a stamp from when it was tanned. Must be like a batch number or something. I think these things are really cool when you find them. Like, it adds like a bit of authenticity, like a bit of uniqueness to the piece. So I included that, and I'm going to include that in there because I think that's a really unique thing that, like, this is the only one in the world that's going to have that specific number in that specific spot. One of the beautiful things about leather. Everything is unique. Alright, so we have our pieces here. So let's lay them out and make sure that we have everything we need. So this is going to be the back, and this is going to be the front. This is going to be the spine. This is going to go here so that the book can slide under it. This is going to go in the corner. And this is going to go as a flap to go around and close it all up. Perfect. Okay. So now we are on to the stage where we need to do mark our stitching lines. So let me find my wing divider. I know it's around somewhere. Aha! Toolbox. Always last place you look. Okay, so I'm setting my wing divider to the first tick on the inches. What's that, like not a quarter of an inch, like a eighth of an inch or something like that. I'm bad at metric or imperial. I'm bad at American. So what we're going to do is we're going to stitch all the way around our back panels. Okay. So let's do a stitching line all the way around. Actually, you know, I'm going to go a little wider than that. Okay, so we're going to go here, and then here, there, there, okay, now this one, the 7-inch is the wide part. That's the one that's going to be where the book's going to go inside of it. We are not going to stitch on that one. We are going to on the short one on the 6-inch side, okay? So we do this. Okay? And on our spine, we are going to definitely sew down the long sides of the spine. Okay? And yeah, we'll just do that. We'll just sew down the long sides of the spine. Okay? And on this panel, we're going to sew it on the left and on the bottom. We're going to leave the other 3 sides open. Okay? There we go. And this part here, this flat part, what we're going to do is okay, so the one that's got our marking on it, let's make this the front cover, okay? And the one that is smooth, let's make that the back cover. Yeah, let's do that. So on this back one, I want to find where the center mark is, and we're just going to mark it for when we put this strap on. So we said it was, what, 7 inches or 9 inches tall? 9. So we need to find our, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, so 4.5. That's our center point, okay? And we're going to go in by about 1 inch from the edge, okay? So we're going to mark a stitching line here along the edge, and then we're going to go for about 1 inch. So we're going to have like a little U and a little 1-inch square, okay? Which then means starting on our center line, we need a 1-inch little square here, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure 1 inch in from the edge. Now on my grid here, on my cutting board grid here, it has 1 inch and 1/2 inch squares. So I'm going to use that to cheat a little bit to get my bearing. So I'm lining up my center mark with one of the grids on my cutting board, So I know where my starting line is, and I know where I'm starting from. Now all I got to do is take my 1-inch ruler, center it on there, and we're just going to go down the 1 inch. Make sure that my ruler is inside of my grids on my cutting board. I've got 1 inch in, and I'm going to make just a light line here. Okay, and then now on the strap, I did a stitching line with my wing divider spacer in from the edge. I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to do the one side of my wing divider is on this little groove that I just made, so that the inside of the wing divider, that's where my stitching line is going to be. Okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing for going the other way. So I'm going to go in here like this. And then I'm going to go like that, and then like that. So okay, so what I want to do is I want to kind of scratch a little deeper on this line here on the inside, because that is where my stitches are going to go when I put that on here. Okay. Now, now I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be sewing it in place. You could also just do a couple quick rivets. That works too. I just figure because I'm going to be doing stitching all around all the edges, if I keep to the same sort of style and do stitching through here as well, it'll just look a little bit more put together than just stamping on a rivet. But that's just a style thing. That's just me. Okay, so we are now going to choose where to put our button stud for our closure. Now on the old one had a Velcro tab that was right a quarter of an inch in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find our center mark. So that's the 4.5 inch mark. Here, do it on this side here. Do it at that 4.5 inch mark. Okay. And then I'm gonna go. You know what? Let's do 2 inches in. Okay. You know what? 2 inches is too far. Let's do 1.5 inches. So I'm going to make a mark here, about in the line with my 4.5 inch mark, and about 1.5 inches in. And that is where we're going to put our snap or button stud or whatever we do here. Okay, so we've got our pieces all cut out, we've got our pieces marked. Now it is time to punch some holes and go from there. So I'm going to pause here while I get a couple tools lined up, and I'll be right back to do the punching. Okay, and we're back. So, oh, you know what? I did forget one thing. Damn it. I always forget one thing. Here we are. Okay, so for our snap, I have really been enjoying working with these things here, these little button studs. And so what I really like about them is you cut, so you use one of these tools here. So it's a round circle with a leading edge on it. And it's super straightforward, super simple. You have this one sticking up out of the bottom piece, you do your flap, and then you can punch the hole, and then it's like straps in there. Down the road, if you want to make a strap that's like a little bit tighter, a little bit looser, you can add extra cuts, punch a hole. So it's really straightforward and simple, and it's like super simple to explain to somebody if they ever wanted to repair it, because it's literally just a screw that pokes up through the back of the leather. So that's what we're going to do here. So this one is going to take a 2.5 millimeter punch. Okay. And then we get our screw sticking up from the back. And we screw this on from above. And we take our screwdriver and tighten the screw from behind. There we go. Super simple, super fun. Now, when we eventually get to the point where we're ready to do our finish our closer strap, we're gonna then punch the hole on this end here. But I don't want to do that yet until after I get everything put together, because then we can have the book in the piece and then figure out where it's gonna lie to get the right spot. That's also part of why I haven't trimmed off this traily little fiddly bit here, because I know we're gonna have to do that at the end anyway. So, let's put this away. Okay, now we are on to punching the holes for our stitching holes. So I'm going to use my Tandy's 4 millimeter stitching chisel set. And in order for this to go smoothly, oh, I forgot something else I wanted to grab. Where's my paint marker pen? It was here a minute ago. I just got a new one out. I'll be right back. Ah, here we are. Found it. I tell you, things are always in the last place you look. So this is my my silver, like, wipeable, erasable fabric marking pen. I use these things so often, I actually got a whole bunch, like a whole replacement pack off of AliExpress. You can also get them from Tandy. Tell them that Tim from Lindsay sent you. So anyway, the reason I wanted to make sure I have this is because I'm going to mark our starting points and our ending points as we go through here, so that way when we go to put it together, we know where everything goes together. Because with the paper pattern, you can like mark it on the paper, but because we're freehanding it, we need to do something like this. Okay, so this piece here is our front. This piece here is our back, like that, okay? And that goes there. So, let's start doing our front one first, okay? And this is where you got to kind of think inside out. So we're going to be doing our stitching lines like this. I'm actually going to flip it around so it's a bit, so we can go down this way. Okay, so I'm going to start off with my larger 6-tine chisel, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to go back 2. Okay, so I went 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I went back 2, and I had 1 chisel tine sticking out over the end. Okay, so on this side, again, make sure that these line up the way you want them to. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then back 2, and this is where this guy comes in. So I want to make sure that I mark that this one here lines up with this one here, so that when I go to sew it together, I know where my start and my end points are. Okay, there we go. Now we're going to do the same thing on this bottom edge here. Okay, so, and what I'm doing is my second tine is going to go in the hole that I started on my bottom row here. So that way I've got like one hanging over the edge in the second tine. Make sure that spacing is proper. Okay, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then back 2. Okay. And then now here we can see when I went back to that one tine that was like a hair over, now it's actually a hair in. So actually I'm going to trim this with my pair of scissors and just shave like a fraction of an inch, just so that way I don't have that last like half of a stitching hole hanging out there, because it wasn't a full circle through the hole, it was just like a half, so it would have been just with cleaning this kind of thing. I'm just being a perfectionist. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then back 2. Okay, and then let's line them back up. Okay, so this one is going to line up with this one. Okay, so we got that. Now, this side here and this side here, so this is going to be our front, so this is our bottom, this is our top. The top, this top right corner here, I'm not sewing anything into it, but I am going to sew a line across it in order to add a little bit of strength and a little bit of rigidity to the book. But I don't need to make sure it matches up with other pieces. So this one I can just go to town and be a little creative with. However, I do want to make sure that my spine matches up with the spots on my spine, because this is going to have to match. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to do our spine along here. So let's start with our book cover. Okay, so we'll go 1, 2, 5, 6, and 7. So it's a perfect 7 all the way down. Okay? So here we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay. Now the main reason that I did it from the book cover is because the book cover is going to be like the true distance. And I don't know if you can see, but I have like a little bit extra on the tail bottom of my spine here. So once we get our other cover set up, we'll be able to trim that off. So let's do that now. So over here, this back, and so this side here is going to be this spine. So it should be 7 straight down because we measure them the same. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Yep, perfect. So now, along this side of the spine, we'll measure 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, and you can see we have a little bit of, at the end here, at the bottom end here, that we're going to have to trim off. That's going to line up like that. Okay, so we'll get to that trimming at the end. So now, back to our front cover here. So we can take our 4 Stein here, and the gap between our bottom one here at the corner and the last one from the row here is just perfectly 4, so I'm going to punch that. Okay, and then up along here, we can finish this run up here and go across the corner. And it looks like I'll have to use my 2 time to get right on the edge of my stitching line for the corner here. And then I can go straight down this way. Okay, now here I have a gap between this long line and the corner. Now it's not enough for my 4mm to be perfectly spaced in between. It's like a little bit wider on one side than the other. So I'm going to take my 1 chime and put it right in the middle between the two. It is imperceptible enough of a difference in the gap that probably only I would ever notice, but I would notice. So I'm going to put that in the middle to fill in that gap there. That's one of the beautiful things about freehanding a pattern, is that sometimes your measurements are like 1/8 of an inch off, just little tiny bits. Okay, so that is our front cover, and our front cover interior panel done. Okay, so we can set those off to the side. Now our back cover, so we've already got the one going all the way down the spine. So let's do another line down this side to match, so that way we have an even spacing for when we do our back panel here, okay? And it should be 7 punches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. There we go. Okay. Now this one, we're going to go just down the line, down the sides. So we can go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Yep. Okay. Okay, now, as I have punched this, I am realizing that this is going to be slightly off. Okay, alright, cool. So, for this one, I know that I want these two to be at the top. Oh, you know what? My pen is out of ink. I will be right back. Okay, let's see here. How are we doing there? Okay. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I make a mark so that these top 2 corners here are the ones where I'm going to start. Okay. And then, over here, I'm going to go, so if I take our book, and if I put our book basically in the middle here, so if I was to go an inch and a half is too low, I think an inch. So if I start this, so because of the spacing of these chisels, 4 holes is 1 inch. So I'm going to mark the 4th hole down, and that's where I'm going to start this thing here. And then that way, actually, you know what? No, I'm going to do the 5th hole. I'm going to do the 5th hole down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that way the top of this line here is about an inch, which will then give us enough room for that book to fit perfectly in here. So in my case, I'm going 5 holes down. In your case, I'm going to go whatever the next hole after the 1 inch mark is. Okay? I'll mark that in the back here. So 2, 4, 5. There we go. So there's that. Now, next, we need to do our tops and our bottoms. And nothing is being sewn along there, so we can just go straight across and not worry too much about matching things up. There we go. Okay. Now we are on to our flap here. So I'm going to start with our flap by doing my 4 tie, my 1 inch spacing here in the middle. Okay. And then remember we had marked out where we wanted that to go. It was on that interior line here. So I'm going to punch that here. Okay. Now, here, I'm going to go 1 punch in this little U shape here. Okay. And here, I'm going to go 1 punch in. And in my case, I've got 1 tine that goes into the line at the back, and 1 tine that goes into the line here on the outside edge, which is the perfect 4-spot spacing. So I've got a nice, neat little box here. Okay. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. So I've got a nice, neat little box that that's going to go into. Okay. So that is it for punching holes. If that's going to sit like that. Oh, wait a minute. I made a mistake. Aha. I need to, so I've got that on the side, that's going to be going in towards the spine. I flip this around. I need to make my highlighter mark at the 5th one from the top here. So 2, 4, 5 here. Okay. So this goes on like this. Our flap is going to go on from here. Our spine goes in the middle. And then our back cover goes on like that. And our spine has a bunch of pulverized rubber bits from my punching block on it. I'll have to clean that thing up. Okay, so we are just about good. So now we are ready to start sewing it all together. So when it comes to sewing it together, in order to make sure that the interior pieces are lining up properly, especially this one and the flap are the one that I am worried about making sure that they line up properly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first sew this line straight down. Then I'm going to sew our flap on, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to pause the video here, and then I'm going to come back in a little bit after I've got some of this sewn together, and I'll show you what I mean by how we're going to sew our flap on here. Because there's two ways that you could do it. One way is to have the flap sticking out from the outside. Another way is to have the flap coming out from sandwiched in between. Now personally, I'm going to go with from the outside because I think that's going to look a little bit better. And if you had this on the inside, then when that book slides down, oh, wait a minute. So we need to make sure that there's enough room for that book to slide down. So yeah, so if we sew this underneath inside, there would not be quite enough room for that book. That book would bump into it on the way down. So we want to sew this on from the outside here. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to sew this tab on here first, then we'll sew our flap on from the side there. Okay, so I'm going to pause here, get the needle and thread out, and I'll see you back again in a minute. For you at least, anyway. Okay, and we're back. So let me show you what I've done here. So where I've got this back flap, I've sewn it through the back that way, in that little U that we punched out, okay? So this is going to be hanging off from on top. So that way, when the book slides in from above, there's nothing, like there's no extra tab of leather there to block it. Now, what I did was I started sewing from our top down, and when I got to the 5th hole, that's when I added in this piece here. Okay. Let's see if I can get this in the right frame there. Okay. So now I've worked my way down, and I'm at the point where I'm just about to go over our flap here. So so what you can do is one of two things. You can either do your thread to overlap over top of it, so it looks like almost like you ran a sewing machine straight across it. That would work. That would also secure it in. But I'm going to do something a little bit different. So I'm going to come in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my needle, and instead of going over the top of this flap, I'm going to go for the hole behind it on our black piece, and then through our brown. Kind of like that. See? Then the back thread, I'm going to go up through the brown, up through the black, and then up through our brown for our flap. So that's going to make it so that way you are still secured, by having your flap sewn all the way across, but it's not going to have this overlapping thread, so it doesn't look like I just fed this thing through a sewing machine. This is one of those little tiny things that when you know about them, you can spot them and you can say, aha, that was clearly made by hand, because there's a stitch there that is sort of hidden underneath a couple layers and in between the layers, so that way there's no way a machine could have possibly done this stitch. Because when you look at it from the one side, it's going to have a continuous stitch line all the way across. When you look at it from the other side, there's going to be a noticeable jump where you don't have that stitch. Okay, so we go back through here, up through here. Okay, now here, so I'm going to go down through the flap, through the black, through the brown, but then my back thread, I'm going to go through the brown, through the black, but not the flap. So I'm coming up beside it here, see? Okay. And then continue on. So this is what I'm talking about here, where you still have it secured all the way through there, but there's no like overlap stitch. But on the other side, single straight line all the way across. Now, you may prefer to do just straight flap over top. If you do, that's cool, good for you. But this is just one of those little things that I just like to do just to kind of show off the fact that I'm doing this by hand. So, from here, I'm going to pause the recording, and from here it's a very simple straight saddle stitch. I'm just going to go all the way down around, across the top, across the bottom. I'm going to do my side for my for this spine here. So from here, you're just doing a really long saddle stitch all the way around the whole book. So I will come back to you in a little bit when I get to the next challenging bit. See you later. Okay, so I've got a little further on the sewing here. So let's see here. Let's see if I can angle this properly so I can see it better. Okay, so I've gone down this side here, and we've done our flap. And then this side here with our spine, I've gone down there, up and down, and I made sure that on the 5th hole, that was the hole where I added our back panel in here. Okay. Now there's two things that I want to make sure I get right at this stage. One is I want to make sure that the receipt book is going to slide in here easily. And two is I've got a little bit of trailing bit here that's sticking out where I don't need it to. So first I'm going to do the easy one. I'm going to trim this so that the tip of our spine is in line with the bottom of our cover here. Okay? So that's easy peasy. Now the reason I wanted to wait until we got to this stage to do this is because I wanted to make sure that I was able to get it nice and smooth and straight. Now, the next part is getting our receipt book in here. So what I'm going to do okay. So in order to use the receipt book, you're going to be sliding your paper in through here. And you pull it down from above. And then that'll sit nice and straight there. And then this will go in here like that. Okay. And once I tap that a little bit, so this is sitting here just underneath of our top here. Got a bit of space underneath here. That slid in nice and smooth and easy. I am not at all worried about this being too tight. I think that's the really important thing. So if your sides are too close together for this side of the book, then it's going to be super, super tight in order to get that book in and out. So you want to have lots of room. Now in this case, our book was, so the book is 5.5 inches wide, and the panel was 7 inches wide, and we lose about 1/4 of an inch on each side for our stitching line. So that gives us like 6 and a bit of space in order for that book to slide in and out, which is just about perfect. So if you are freehanding this for a book that has different dimensions than what I'm working with, just keep in mind that basically you want to make sure that you have like 1.5 inches wider on the cover page than the book that you're sliding in the back here with. So now that we know our book's going to slide in and out nice and easy, we are now ready to finish off sewing along our bottom and our top, and then this whole back panel is ready to be assembled onto the front panel. So I'm going to pause here and I'll be back in a few minutes when I get that done. Okay, and we are back. So what I have done is I've sewn around the edges here, got the top and the bottom of this page, sewed our front onto the spine, and then around here in a nice little rectangle. So we have our book cover all ready to go. Okay, so the last thing that we need to do is we just need to, let me just adjust the angle here. There we are. So the last thing that we need to do is we need to figure out where we're going to punch the hole for our stud to go. So we're going to feed the receipt book through like this. Okay, make sure that receipts book is down there in the right spot. Hold this back up. There we are. Close this up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of fold it over so it's in the right spot. Take this and put a little bit of tension on it. And I'm going to make a mark where I've got that stud pushing up from underneath here, okay? Right there. Okay. So that is our spot where we want to punch our hole for our stud release. Okay. So we take this here, we punch it there. there we go. And just like that, we're all set. So now when you want to open the book, you just pop it open like that, and there you are. When you want to close it, go like that, and then we're all set. So now what I do want to do is I want to trim this flap here a little bit. So I have an English point punch here. You could use a pair of scissors too and like trace out an angle, but I figure I have the tool, I may as well use it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go about there. And now we have a nice little point on the end of our strap. And there we go. So that gives us plenty of play here to get our fingers under this easily. And when I hand it to my customer, if they decide that they want it to be a little bit shorter, no big deal. Super easy to trim it back. A whole lot harder to make it longer. But there we are. A nice, compact, does just what it needs to do, receipt book cover. So, I hope that this has helped you out, because I'm sure I'm not the only person in the world who has wanted to make one of these or has a use for this. I'm sure that somebody out there would need to have this made for them, kind of thing. And you can see it's not hard to do by yourself, you know, it's just a matter of measuring, cutting, sewing, and away you go. So, thanks for joining me in the shed tonight for this video, and I'll see you later. Safe travels. Hey, welcome back to the shed. So today we are going to be doing a fun little project. We're making a new business receipt book. So it's going to be fun. Let's strap in.